Okay, hey, welcome to Open Leadership Conversations. My name's Heidi Hess von Ludewig. I'm an Open Org ambassador, and I'm here today with Jos Groen. And Jos, would you take a moment and introduce yourself before we get started?
Yeah, that's okay. My name is Jos Groen. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm an executive at Axians, part of Vinci Energies worldwide. And I built an open organization based on the characteristics of the open organization. And as a leader and as an open org ambassador, I'd love to talk about it and share ideas. But that's
Awesome.
why I'm here.
Yeah. And so this is part 2 of our interview series. In part 1, we talked a bit about how some early experiences shaped your desire to be more open with your leadership style. And so we want to continue that conversation today and talk a little and dive a little bit deeper about some of your experiences and thoughts on open leadership. So one of our first questions is, in the first interview that you had mentioned the need to balance people and business. And this is, I think, a really important characteristic of open organizations. They're really at their best, neither one nor the other. They're not all about the people and they're not all about the business. And so I'm curious about some examples that you might have had in your leadership history where you've had to balance these two things, and how did it go, and how did you actually balance them, and what things kind of needed to be improved in hindsight, right?
Well, that's quite a lot of questions, Heidi. Thank you for that.
That's what I'm about. I'm throwing it to you. Over to you.
I'm coming from a final responsibility in business operations, um, with dynamics in both the market and in human and people and control dynamics in organizations. So if you look at an organization, I think you have two things to balance. There's the business side, so everything about market, about control, about your systems, data, everything you need to run a business. And when you are in charge as an executive, you have to master all these business-wise issues by your own. But I think, and that's what I have experienced, it is far more satisfying and it's creating far more value in a company when you have the human essence in your organizations to unfold. And and if you bring in the human aspect in your company, and you build a working environment based on trust, and you make it safe for people just to be themselves. Not to act like they have to be somebody. No, it's okay that you are your unique self. And if you go through that process and building it, it's giving you so much more fun, so much more joy, and even gratitude in your company, where people really get to go into their intrinsic motivation and intrinsic contribution to the cause of your company. And in response for that, you get a lot of joy and you get a lot of great ideas, which keep you moving and thriving ahead on competitors in the market. So it's really bringing in the human aspects in your company and balancing it with the business interests. You get a far more unique organization with far more uniqueness in the market. So you are really becoming a special company with even special results. Better than you could even imagine in your mind. And it's all happening because you have the human essence unfolding in your organization.
I think that one of the things that touches me about your answer, resonates with me about your answer, is that people centered or people balanced is that ability for them to be themselves and contribute. And then my next thought was, there are times when that people side really butts up against that business side, right? And challenges the business side. In other words, challenges it and so I'm a program manager, so I'm thinking of schedules, right? The time it takes to allow people to contribute can bump up against that business side for performance
Hmm.
and quick schedule, right? And so that's like such a fine line, and it's an art. That's where it becomes an art, I think, to allow contribution, but to also do that with, without impacting the business side of things too much. That's where that art of the balance comes in, if you will.
Hmm. Now, I think what you say is right. You have a lot of experience, also me as well, where there's conflict of interest between those two to be in harmony. Um, but on the other hand, it takes a lot from a leader just to keep the balance in place, while sometimes you move on short-term goals with your company, more emphasis on performance, and sometimes you have more space and you can provide more space for the human essence, for ideas to
Mm-hmm.
emerge. Um, and I think it all starts with being aware in the fact that you as a leader, sometimes you have to be act autonomous, and sometimes you have to act in the collective
Mm-hmm.
atmosphere. So, and that's all about the same balance as well. Sometimes you have to be more from the hierarchical point of view, to say, okay, we've heard all this, but now we move forward with this point because it's we need to move forward to get to the next bus stop together. And sometimes you can give some space for people to say, okay, we have to think about the next phase we are phasing into. We are facing problems. We are facing challenges. Okay, what's coming up and what's willing to happen here? And the balance starts within the balance of the leader itself, because you have to be aware what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that you brought up another good point that, there's not always going to be this balanced delineation of 50-50 every time.
No,
It's going to change over time depending upon the circumstance. And I think sometimes when leaders approach these open principles, they think, they kind of over rotate from where they are and they're thinking it's a people free for all, and that's not it either, right? It's like if you zoom out and you look at the big picture, yeah, it's roughly 50-50 over the course of 10 years or something. But day to day, it oscillates back and forth within that range, right? And it just depends on the situation. Um, you talked about the balance within the leader, him or herself. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What do you mean, and um, what? How can leaders help that, or support that within themselves?
well, I think that one thing is that if you work with the characteristics of the open organization, there must be some touch points in your personality and in your character, which help you to embody all these characteristics. Transparency. Uh, um, if you talk about transparency, your mind says, okay, I know what you're meaning. I know what you're meaning, so I'll publish every data I have so people can take better decisions, just to enable decision makers to make decisions. But that's the head exercise. And I think then when you embody, for example, transparency or inclusivity, your whole system, your feeling, your gut feeling, your heart emotion have to be in line with the one you are and the one you are showing to others. And if you balance it, it's not always the short-term mind or ratio reaction. If you are transforming an organization, you have huge amounts of drama every day. You have huge
Mm,
amount of situations every day you have to deal with.
mm-hmm,
And when I talk about being yourself to know, okay, when am I balanced? You need to be aware of the fact that you are conditioned to do what you tend to do.
mm-hmm,
But that doesn't mean that you are that person. So there is a huge difference sometimes between the way you are acting and the way you are. And for me to be balanced, I always have to be the authentic me. So it's being always balanced with myself. So I did a lot of work just to learn how my system works. How does my feeling, how can I adopt feeling into my decision making or in the way I approach people? Or, you know, I'm always working from a sincere intention just to make things better, you know, to help people, just to help people to create a better working environment or create better results. And it's that sincere intention you have to feel in your body. And if you feel it, then it's the unique you making contact with the other. And then the energy is on a, you know, a very sincere level. If you try to do it from your head, and you can do it, just try to do it at home, you know, just talk only from the head and you see there's no resonance with the other people, you know. There's an instruction. Maybe you can give an instruction and the instruction is changed. Energy, you put energy from outside, willing to go inside a person, trying to get people to do something. And I think if it is body work, you know, you can say, okay, we can discuss something, but for me, it's able to be more in a, how do you call it, in an observation mode. So I can observe, okay, what's happening in that person? What's the how do you call it? The non-expression. What's the expressed? Your verbal and non-verbal communication.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was trying to talk about the non-verbal. You know,
Yeah.
you can actually see what's happening inside, but you have to respond on that. But you have to be aware that you're not always sending your information to the other. You have to be silent and just say, okay, just check out what's happening here. So someone can respond from the inside. Okay, but that's the honest answer. And, you know, I love to work with honest answers, with honest intentions.
Yeah, and so this is really interesting because I'm on a similar path and have a similar philosophy, although I call, you know, I describe it differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm thinking is that the balance comes from on self-awareness about how you react generally, what that automatic reaction or operating in the world, our behavior is, so that you can choose. Instead of operating and doing your behaviors habitually because that's what you've done before and you've kind of become conditioned to, you become aware and take some breaths or whatever it is you want. I say that like everybody's saying it, so it's really trite. So that's why I'm laughing at myself. You know, take a moment and say, how is it that I actually want to be? And that's, I think, what that difference between who that person, you mentioned, I think, who the person really is and who they are coming across as, right? And when you can slow down, and I call it wise mind, I call it being in your wise mind, where you're able to observe yourself, pause, and consider what the options are in a situation instead of automatically reacting or doing something or feeling something, right? And then you're more in touch with your real self, as you've said, and you can support what your real self really wants, which is your values of, hopefully, transparency, inclusivity, collaboration, adaptability, and community, right? So like, so I think that's what I'm hearing. I call it wise mind, and I think I forget the term you use, but it's the same thing. It's that's how leaders find balance, that's what in themselves, that wise mind creates that balance of being able to really consider.
Yeah, but I think it's also about the openness and the willingness to learn more about yourself. So how is my system intended to be when I was born? You know, that could be a whole different person that I'm expressing myself every day.
Yeah.
So if I'm living a life of becoming someone I am not, you know, I'm be very unhappy. So that's where burnout starts and everything like that. But if I'm living the life I'm intended to be, you know, that's where the magic happens. So I'm always centered, as you say sometimes. I'm centered.
Centered.
But you know, as a leader, you have to be aware that there's a lot of situations coming around every day that demand your decision or your insight. And we are conditioned just to react right away. So, okay, so this is the situation, there's a crisis somewhere, okay? We do this, this, and that. You do this, this, and that. And okay, then we solve the problem. But a problem is not something to be solved. A problem is something to listen to. Because in every problem, there's a root cause, there's information. And as a leader, if you can step back, go into observation and just be aware, okay, what is this information about? What is it telling us? And if it is telling us, what does the information ask from me to be? So I have a choice as a leader to show up as a leader dealing with the information. So sometimes I need to be autonomous. Sometimes I need to be more of a director in authority. Sometimes I just need to be I have to empathize with the things that are happening. So I'm aware that the situation or the problem or the crisis and the information which is in it is asking something for me to be. And if I master that principle, I can be very effective, because then in every problem, if you listen to it, the information which is in it, you can transform it into an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's the nice part of my work and my job, is that, okay, I see a lot of problems, I see a lot of crises, I see a lot of situations every day. Mm-hmm. And my aim is just to transform all these problems into opportunities, because there's information, things are wanting to show up, things are wanting to happen, and I need to listen to it and just say, okay, this one, okay, we take the shortcut, we solve it right away, we know something is happening, but we wait and see until it pops up, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or in 2 months. But you are aware that you are moving a problem over to another period of time. You're not solving it now. Mm-hmm. So, and that's where the difference is between transformation and change. I think if you are into transformation, you are able to listen and see the information in a situation or a problem and ask yourself the question, okay, what is it asking for me to be or show up as a leader? Mm-hmm. And that could be a whole different typeset you have to master, but, as long as you're centered and it's one of your capabilities, then it's for the group and for the effect of any problem to be solved, it's fine. It works perfectly. But you can only do it when you are in good connection with yourself. If you only do head exercises, you only do situation solving, problem solving.
Yeah, and before we get a little bit into change versus transformation, I want to share a thought with you about what you said. So from my background researching creativity in the workplace, you're spot on with it's really resonating with me about a pause before you solve a problem, because for two reasons. Most of the time, we're not involved in problem definition. We just think we know what the problem is and we're going to solve it, but we're not really solving the right problem. And the second thing is, when we have that knee-jerk reaction to just go and do what we've always done, that's not innovation. That's not creativity. That's where having too much expertise and practice doing something in response to a problem actually negates innovation and creativity, right? It's the black box that we try to get out of. Get out of the box, think out of the box. That's the box. Because the habituated box. So I love the fact that, because then there's an opening. It doesn't have to be solved right away, the problem. It can be, you can wait, look, see, check it out a little bit, and then solve it much more probably effectively, identifying the actual problem and fixing that and doing it in an innovative way instead of inside the box, right?
Yeah, that's true. You have to get out of your conditioning.
Yes. That's the box. The other
That's
thing
the box.
Is...
That's the disease, maybe. That's the disease.
The other thing I'm connecting with another interview that's an actual published article on opensource.com with Sam Knuth, is something that he talked about was that leadership decisions have a broader context. And when you were talking about being open and kind of getting a variety of problems every day, dramas and situations, and things like that, it occurred to me that, it's really important what you're saying about having that time to pause and consider. And because as a leader, you're getting things from all kinds of levels, directions, places, etc. As an individual contributor, I'm getting it from a handful, right? Like but a leader, an executive leader, is getting a wider variety of these things. And that makes that habituated response even more important to challenge and to consider, because you can't respond well if you're always thinking that it's from a certain direction or what it's about, etc. Right? We want to simplify it because cognitively it's kind of easier. It's a stressful job, and so we want to de-stress it as much as possible. But that has repercussions to it, as you're pointing out. So what you're saying to me really ties in a lot to the broadness of the problems and people who come to you for help, and to be able to be open to them in a balanced way is so much more important because of that.
Yeah, and it's building trust when you are honest and say, okay, I hear what you say. I know this is quite a big problem for now, but let's discuss it in a week. Just take the time to think it over and have a good discussion when we both experience time to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes it's putting the pause button and say, okay, we've come to this point. We leave it now and we push it forward in a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Because solving every problem in any moment, in any day, that's not about leadership. That's about taking control about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing as a manager, so it's not about leadership then anymore for me, but that is about management. Okay, we know every decision goes through you, so you know what's happening. You get a lot of plates with a lot of problems, with a lot of with a lot of drama, and the only thing you have to do is, oh my God, I have so many. It's not empowering people
Right.
to take their responsibility. You have to set the borders and say, okay, if we are aware of our identity, our goals, feel free just to take the decision. As long as it's within the borders we set together. It's not
Mm-hmm.
my borders, it's the
Mm-hmm.
borders you set collectively. And if you have mutual understanding about these issues and borders, people can take great responsibility on it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need
Right.
they don't need me for every decision.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm quite lazy, so I want people to take their own decisions.
I hear you on that. I often, describe myself as I'm a program manager. I want to create the system so it works without me. And then I can go drink Mai Tais, right, on the beach or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but that's true. You have to choose your battles. You have to pick the things you are emphasizing, you are putting attention to,
Mm-hmm.
From an executive perspective, you have a lots of situations, lot of things happening every day, but you really have to choose, okay, for the strategy to be in focus with the things you need to achieve or you want to do, put the focus there and just, and if you are quiet within yourself, you can have focus on the things you need to do.
Yeah, and
Just
so
all about consciousness.
yeah, it is. I want to just touch back on transformation and change briefly. So can you tell me what the difference is? You mentioned it, the difference between transformation and change. So what is that difference for you?
For me, change is that you want to put the energy from outside to the inside. So you know a lot of top-down decisions who are not taken inclusively. And managers are saying, well, next week I expect this from you, and you are not into it, or you're not willing to do things. You feel resistance because energy wants to go from outside to inside just to do something from you. And you are the one saying, oh, I want to do it. I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where resistance builds. So it's energy flowing from outside to inside. If you look to transformation, that's more of an engagement where energy wants to come from within to the outside. So probably,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of decisions you've taken on your own, on your feeling and on your heart energy, you say, okay, this feels good for me, and you're going to do it, and you're going to do it in the best way you can. That's what transformation is about. You do things differently than you did it yesterday because you've chosen in your
Mm-hmm.
system to do so. But the other way is feeling natural as well. And if you go for change, maybe you start to behave differently, but you don't feel good about it sometimes. So that's yeah, it's a principle kind of thing, but it's all about
Mm-hmm.
energy flowing from inside to the outside. So that's where you get people for intrinsic information. That's where creativity, where innovation
Mm-hmm.
starts. Innovation or creativity doesn't start because a manager asks you to be creative. If
Very
I ask
true.
you, well, Heidi, just be creative
Go be
today, please, please,
creative.
please. Yeah, yeah, And you say, okay, it's not gonna work today for me. Okay, that's the energy from outside to inside. But if you wake up, say, oh, I feel nice, and I feel comfortable and safe in my working environment to express myself, to be myself, just to that you can be open about the things you want to be open about. Things come from the inside to the outside. That's where the magic starts. That's where innovation starts
Mm-hmm.
to come. That's where creativity is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's the human essence I was talking about. And that's more about transformation than it's about change. Change is something from the past.
Yeah, I really, as someone, I'm certified in change management, right? And I really like how you picked up on the fact that change is often viewed as negative, but transformation is viewed as positive, right? And I think that's fascinating. I love your viewpoint on that, and your use of that, like in your work, right? It's not just about thinking that, but it's about taking that really interesting perspective and actually using it and sharing it with your team.
And sometimes it's about change. Sometimes you need to change something because you don't
Yes.
have time to go for the transformation, or transformation isn't willing to happen. So you have to do something. But just be careful about putting too much change onto people because then they're gonna lose their trust, then they're gonna lose their commitment, they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
lose their intrinsic motivation. So you have to be very aware of what you're doing and what you're asking for people.
Yeah.
And if you are aware, you can even say, okay, we're not going to like it, but this is the short-term thing we need to do here. So please help. And then we get this thing done, and then we start the conversation. Okay, how do we solve this issue on a more sustainable manner? Then we move forward to the transformation. So, but
Yeah.
it's about awareness. You have
Yeah.
to know where you put your energy in.
Yeah. And I'm also hearing, it's about empowerment, right? Like you
Yeah.
kind of gave a good comparison of transformation and change, right? And in that comparison is change, disempowering, transformation, empowering, right? So I would love to keep going, but I know that we have to come to our conclusion. And Jos, thank you so much for your time. It's always wonderful to talk to you, and I always get so much from our discussions. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, I think we're going to do it. Thank you, Heidi, for your time.
Thanks.